All right, welcome back. What we're going to cover in this module are basically participation mortgages. This is another strategy than the last strategy we shared and spent quite a bit of time on, where obviously the all-inclusive trustees or wraparound mortgages. And what we're going to get into is different strategies which will allow us to basically create high yields. But one of the benefits of moving forward is everything's going to be much easier. I kind of took the most difficult strategy right up front with the wraparound mortgages. Everything else conceptually is going to be much easier to get your head around. So let's just dive into this. What is a participation mortgage? Well, there's all kinds of different kinds of types of participation mortgages. In essence, a participation mortgage is where the lender participates in some kind of profit sharing, some kind of upside potential when issuing the loan. So there's different types of participation mortgages. There's a SAM, shared appreciation mortgage. That's where when a property goes up in value. Traditionally, you found them in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, where let's say you're selling a property and you're doing owner carryback, and you're in a market where there's soon to be some appreciation, or there really is some crazy appreciation right now. Rather than just carry a normal loan at a fixed rate of return, what you might want to entertain is doing a shared appreciation mortgage, where you kind of equity share with the person that is buying the home and you're carrying back the note on. This works really well when you have when you take a loan subject to, you purchase a property, you take a loan subject to, and then you tack on a second behind it and you flip it for more. So let's just using round numbers, you buy a property for $100,000, you're going to flip it for $130,000. You might want $5,000 or $10,000 in cash, let's say $5,000 in cash, and you put a second on the mortgage for the balance. But rather than just carrying a second, I think we said we were selling the house for $135,000, and we took $5,000 in cash, so you have a $30,000 second mortgage. So if you take a $30,000 second mortgage, instead of carrying it back at 7%, 10%, 15% interest, and aside from doing an all-inclusive trustee, this is another strategy. What you can do is you can do a shared appreciation mortgage where you say, look, I'll carry back this note, and I'll carry it back for 3 years, 7 years, 10 years, however long you want to carry it back, but I want a piece of the upside potential. I want 10% of the appreciation. I want 15% of whatever that appreciation is, or maybe even 50-50. So what's really nice is if that property goes up in value, if the value of that area goes up, you're going to get a percentage of that when that note comes due and payable. Another type of participation mortgage would be something like an EPM, an equity participation mortgage. And we're really going to focus kind of on the equity participation mortgage. A little bit different than shared appreciation because we're not waiting for the property to go up in the share in market appreciation. What we're looking at is value add type scenarios. So we want an immediate pop. We don't want to wait 3 years, 5 years, 7 years for our profits. I want to equity participate with a developer or a flipper who's going to add immediate value to the property, so force the appreciation, and I want to share in that equity participation. There's also other ones, and you'll come across these as you start doing more loans, and they all have different acronyms. The SIM, which is a shared income mortgage. I like how the word mortgage is spelled there. What you'll find is a lot of times, maybe if you're selling an apartment building, there's a property that generates some income. Perhaps there's a flipper, a developer, an investor who's acquiring a building that's maybe undervalued. It has 50% occupancy, and they're going to go in and clean that building up. They're going to stabilize that building, and then what they're going to do is they're going to take it to market rate. So right now it's maybe functioning at 50% capacity. But in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months down the road, suddenly you're going to be at full capacity, proper management in place, and your income shoots through the roof. Well, if you're the lender in a scenario like that, you're probably going to want not only to do the loan, but you're also going to want to share in that increase in income and cash flow. So that would be a shared income mortgage. So at the end of the day, these are all participation mortgages. And what we're going to do is we're going to stick based on today's economy, what's going on now, I like short-term loans. I don't do anything longer than a year. It's a great hedge against inflation. It's great security against the uncertainties where the economy is going, both politically and economically. So I would, if you can imagine, a gigantic bulldozer pushing a bunch of cash. Again, we're just going to go out with our little bucket, scoop up some cash. We're not going to stand in danger's way. We're not going to get overly greedy. We're going to go in, quick cash out. And we're going to kind of create a method for doing it repeatedly versus kind of going out there with a big truckload, getting in front of the bulldozer, trying to shovel as much of it as we can before we get run over. Right now, because of the uncertainties in the marketplace, I just think it's smarter, shorter, more profitable, quicker deals. So basically, it's lending with a kicker. We're doing our traditional loan, but we're getting a kicker. We're getting an equity kicker. We're getting a cash flow kicker. So again, I talked about the different participation mortgages, the type of them. And again, what you just have to remember is this is where you as the lender, or you and your investors as a lender, are going to participate in some form of the profits. And we'll get into some number crunching here, and I'll show you how it all lays out. It's pretty slick. So what we want to do, what's really important, is that you lock in a specific return today. Because what happens a lot of times in these equity participation type scenarios, again, you are relying on that flipper, that real estate developer, to create value so that you get a higher return. What I have seen is people really heavily lean on the participation side, and kind of the norm is to offer a lower interest rate. So if interest rates are, right now they're ridiculously low, but let's just use an example of 6%. Let's say interest rates are at 6%. You'll find a lot of participation mortgages, they might offer the loan at 5% to make it more attractive for that developer, or for that borrower, for that flipper. And in return, what they're looking for is a piece of the upside. The challenge you run into is, what if the upside's not there? So in essence, what you've done is you've done a loan that's below market and you didn't get the upside. So really, I do them a little differently. I think you should focus on locking in a specific return that makes sense today. The kicker, the equity share portion of it, is nothing more than icing on the cake. This is not where you want to hang your shingle. What you really want to focus on is sticking to our rules. Our rules completely apply. All the rules we use in an all-inclusive trust deed are going to apply with doing a participation type mortgage. We want to make sure that whatever return you get, you want a specific return as your floor rate, so that if you don't get any icing on the cake, the profit was still satisfactory. So again, what you're looking at when you're doing a participation mortgage is you're locking a specific rate today, and you're going to get a percentage of the profits upon resale. So again, as I mentioned before, this can work really well with cash flow properties as well. Right now, I'm not really talking to cash flow properties because, again, that's a little more long-term, and I'm not a subscriber of long-term investing right now. I think it's good that you own maybe some inexpensive free and clear properties, or if you could own some multi-units, I think that's prudent. But right now, I'm just really looking at what's the highest and best use of your capital or your investor's capital. For many of you, many of you are doing very well, and some of you are struggling. So what you need to do is you need a vehicle that is so sexy that investors will say yes, that they will invest with you. So if you're standing in line like any other apartment owner and offering them a 6% annualized rate of return, an 8% annualized rate of return, that's not too exciting. When you can bring something to the table that offers them double digits, 10, 12, 15% annualized rate of return, now you've got their attention. But also be aware of that if you offer too much, it's too good to be true. You fall into that category. So I always like the 10%. It's double digit. It looks a lot better than 6, 7, or 8. And what happens is It allows you to capture those investors that you need, capture them away from someone that's offering a lower rate by offering a higher rate, but something that is sound. And again, we're not kind of hypothetically hoping or wishing for a return. You can sit in front of investors and show them that this is a contractual rate of return collateralized by real estate. So anyways, I'm a little bit off track. Let me get back to working with cash flow properties. Again, what you can do is you can get a percentage of the cash flow. So that's kind of an income kicker. If you're doing a cash flow type play, that income kicker should be somewhere between 15 to 50% of the income. And in terms of the equity kicker, a percentage of the profits on that at resale, you're probably looking somewhere between 10 and 50%. It really depends on how much fat's in the deal, how much upside there is in the deal. Traditionally, what we do, for example, is we pay a 10-10 on all our transactions. So we give them a 10% income and we give them 10% of the upside profits. So instead of having a percentage of the income, like this would be a percentage of the person's income. So if someone's bringing $10,000 a month and you're at 50% of it, you might get $5,000. Not too many people will do that unless there's crazy upside and they're very desperate. But again, this gives you a sense of some guidelines to shoot for. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we're sticking to our rules. All our rules about loan to value, about working with someone with a track record, with experience, all that applies. Having the protected equity is critical. So we're not going to deviate from those rules. If you're not familiar with them, go back to previous modules and you should write them down on a piece of paper. So if you're ever questioned about what your guidelines are, your rules, you'll have them laid out. So let's look at some of the issues with it. We obviously know, they're high paying. There's a nice yield when you get a fixed rate of return plus a piece of the upside. But what are some of the caveats? Well, some states, profits, when they're tied to specific performance, it really implies a partnership. So you need to check the rules in your state because some states do not consider participation mortgages a partnership. Some states do consider it a partnership, in which case you have a hell of a lot more exposure to liability. One of the beautiful things about being a lender is we have very little exposure to liability. If the flipper or the developer does something wrong and gets sued, it doesn't affect you because you are the lender. You're not a general partner. So what happens is that state by state, you need to be aware of this because when you have a performance-based note, it can throw you into that state's definition of a partnership. So one of the things you have to look at is how do you get around some of these things? Well, in some cases, you can predetermine, and we'll get into some numbers here in a bit, but in some cases, there's kind of a predetermined figure because before we do a participation type mortgage, we want to know what our participation potential is. If I'm going to loan the money at 10% fixed for 12 months and I'm going to get a piece of the pie, well, what kind of pie am I looking at? Am I getting an extra 2%? Am I going to get another 20%? And what does that translate to? Does that translate to $500? Does it translate to $5,000? So by going in and analyzing your numbers and determining your numbers, what you can do to get around this, being tied to performance and that implying a partnership is you can charge back-end points. So what's really great with the back-end points is you can just say, well, let's see. And you can do a back-end flat fee. You can just say, well, let's see, the participation side looks to be about $5,000 bonus. So tell you what, why don't I just charge you whatever these fees are, $5,000 worth of fees. And you can either just do a flat fee of $5,000, or you could tie that into points. Do the math on the points, loan, the $5,000 divided into the loan amount, and that'll determine how many points that is. So there's a way to do that. So there's an exit fee. Another thing you can do is you can include a clause that is disclaiming any intention of creating a partnership. Again, some states it'll hold up, some states it won't hold up, but at least you're providing clarity that you are not intending, this is not intended as a partnership, that you are acting solely as a lender. Some states call it a savings clause, and that what it basically states is that the interest that you are about to collect will not exceed whatever that state laws, whatever the state usury law is. So you need to be familiar with that when you're doing your numbers. Personally, I think it's just smart to address it all up front. Sure, put the clauses in there, but make sure you address everything in advance. And again, keep in mind, we are not doing owner-occupied loans. We are only working with who? Flippers, developers, real estate investors. Everything we are doing is non-owner occupied. So never, ever, ever, again, I've said this before, never work with owner-occupied people, only investors. And what some people do, which I think is really snazzy, is to create a separate note. So let's just say, let's use some hypotheticals. Let's say we're loaning someone $150,000. And we're going to do a second mortgage for $150,000, and it's going to be an equity participation mortgage where we get a piece of the action. Well, maybe we create a second mortgage that is just a straight standalone 10% interest only loan. That's all it is. And then what we do is we create a third mortgage, which is for the equity participation portion of it. You could do that. And what I'll share with you in the next module is actually some paperwork. I just, 3 days ago, I just drafted a note, a mortgage, and a profit share for an equity participation mortgage on one of our transactions. And I'll give you the numbers on it here as an example so you can see the real numbers on it, and then I'll follow it up with paperwork. And so what we do is we create a note and mortgage, which is just standalone, interest-only, done deal. So we don't have any issues with usury. And one of the challenges is with participation mortgages is if there's a profit share element, a lot of title companies have difficulties insuring that note, insuring title, because they don't know what the profit is based on. There's too many things that can come in, too many variables. And the title insurance doesn't want to insure that transaction because of the equity share element within it. So what we have found is what is easier to do is to collateralize the person's money by using a mortgage and just record a normal mortgage, like an interest-only mortgage, and then enter into a separate profit share agreement with investors. So what happens is the mortgage is obviously collateralized. It's important to collateralize someone's money. So if someone's giving you $150,000 to invest, you need to make sure that $150,000 is collateralized. No personal loans. It must be collateralized. It must the note must be drafted, and the trust deed or the mortgage must be recorded before releasing your investor's funds to the borrower. Beyond that, now the collateral's there, it's covered. You can enter into a separate, just standalone agreement for the profit share element. Now, obviously, that's not collateralized, but again, it is a contract. If someone doesn't perform, you could take them to court. But the core amount, if you go back to what I initially said, you lock in a specific return. So if you got that 10% interest and that was your objective, great. If you didn't get the profit share because the person weaseled out of it, well, then you have to go to court for it. But the important part is the principal is safe and the initial return of 10% is safe. So again, that's a couple different ways around the profit being tied to specific performance. And again, because you're doing a participation mortgage, you can easily exceed usury laws. We mentioned that with the all-inclusive trust deeds, which is a little different because the yield is an arbitrage yield. So the note rate is one thing, and our yield is a different scenario. You could have a note rate of 15%, but then you could have your actual rate of return because you arbitrage underlying first is higher, is up 30-40%. In this particular case, you have same thing. You have to watch it, but it's not an arbitrage scenario. So what you have is you have a note rate, say of 10%, but maybe you have another 5% kicker on top of it. So just be aware of how you're structuring the deals in your own particular state. And loans, again, the loans return are based on performance. So like I keep saying this, make sure that base rate, that foundation rate is sufficient to meet all your investment criteria. So it meets your investors' criteria and also meets your criteria where you can make some money on the spread. And then, the participation part is just the icing on the cake. So just make sure you have that all lined up. One of the things you have to be aware of is what's called a phantom tax. All the notes that we draft, we do as interest-only notes. But a lot of times when you're working with flippers or developers, contractors, sometimes notes are drafted without any payments. So what happens is, how do I explain this? What happens is if the rate, the face amount of the note is 10% interest, for example, and let's say there's no payments for the first 18 months. Even though you never received any interest, that note is still earning interest. It's deferred, but it still has an accrual of interest, and that accrual of interest is taxable. So at the end of the year, you get to pay taxes on money which you never received. So how do we get around this? Make sure you charge interest. So you could charge a lower interest rate if a developer or a flipper comes to you and says, well, I don't want to pay any interest. And let's say you're getting towards the end of a tax year, and maybe it's only a 6-month loan. Maybe he doesn't want to pay for 6 months, but nonetheless, it falls into that critical tax time where you didn't receive payments for 6 months, but you're going to have to pay. You're going to have to pay as if you had received it. So in a situation like that, you could also just do a lower payment. You could do a partial payment and then have the interest kick up after the fact. So there's so many different ways around it. Easiest way, you just do interest-only loans. So again, the critical part here to remember is you have to have that base rate. For me, the most critical part that I want you to understand is you have to have that base rate plus a percentage of profits. And it's really important to make sure that base rate is sufficient. So if for some reason that person zeroes out the profits, if they get into a deal, their numbers are wrong, the market moved against them, they couldn't sell it, it took longer, whatever the dynamics are, whatever your base rate was, you were totally satisfied, you and your investors are totally satisfied with the return. This is really what you're shooting for. This is just the icing on the cake. So one of the things to look at is why you and your investors would want to do an equity participation type mortgage, some kind of profit share element. Well, again, I'm kind of going back to basic lending. What are the benefits as a lender? And I bring this up because I've had a couple conversations with a few of you where you're still not abundantly clear on what the benefits of lending are. You kind of got the strategy down and you've got the numbers down, but some of you have been painted a bit into a corner because a prospective investor started asking, well, why would I want to do a loan? Look at all the banking problems, and why would I want to foreclose? So I just kind of back to the basics. The benefits as a lender, you as a lender, you and your investor as a lender is there's liability protection against third-party creditors. So again, yes, you can go in and you can flip a home yourself. This is a conversation I had last week with a new investor who is a home flipper here in San Diego, and she's very good at what she does, but frankly, she's burned out. So we had a conversation. I said, well, what if I could put you into a mortgage on one of our properties and you be an investor, you play banker, and I'll be the borrower, and I'm not going to give you the same rate of return you would get as a flipper, but at the same token, you're not going to have the same hours. You're not going to be doing the Monday through Friday 9 to 5. You don't have to deal with the agents and banks and counteroffers and offers and negotiations and contractors and your all your rehab and budgeting and keeping track of it. And so I said, what if you could just write a check, have a hell of a great rate of return, and I don't know, find something else to do with your Monday through Friday 9 to 5. Go to the beach, take up some other hobby, or just continue to flip, but have some of your money that's absolutely in a passive position, earning you a nice, healthy rate of return. So one of the things that came up in the conversation was this, the liability, the exposure to liability. As a flipper or a developer, there's enormous exposure to liability. In the state of California, for example, real estate developers faced with 10 years liability. You develop out a lot and you build a home, you build a condo, you build a high-rise, doesn't matter what it is, you're facing 10 years liability. If something goes wrong, they go back to contractors and developers. As a lender, you are loaning money. Not a lot of liability there. So if that developer doesn't pay their taxes, if that developer doesn't pay their a contractor and there's a mechanics lien placed on it, you're safe because you're covered from those third-party creditors. And again, remember, the mortgage has priority over those creditors. Well, I shouldn't say taxes. Uncle Sam always has priority number one. So let's say Uncle Sam is number one. The first mortgage lender is number 1B, and then we're the second lender, so we're number 2 in line. Everyone else, the mechanics lien, the alimony, the child support, whatever it is, everything gets stacked behind us. And remember, you are a secured creditor, not an unsecured creditor. So these are things you can share with your prospective investors when you're speaking to them. Also, what you have to remember is there's title protection from the lender's title insurance. That title insurance policy protects the validity of your mortgage so that borrower later can't come back and say, well, this isn't my mortgage, or I don't have to pay this for whatever crazy reason they come up with. You've got title insurance. It covers it. It covers insurance on the properties. It covers the fact that the property has no additional encumbrances other than what's disclosed to you. So you have that. You also have fire insurance. So when a structure is built, there's fire insurance, and this protects you in the event of some catastrophe. The house burns down, the property gets sucked up by a tornado, damaged from a tornado or a hurricane. So you have to make sure that you're included as what's called the loss payee clause. So again, when you're talking to your prospective investors, yes, your money is safe. We're safe from third-party creditors. We're also, we have title insurance, which ensures the validity of our note. And it also ensures what we see on title. It ensures our position. We also have fire insurance. So in the event something happens to the structure itself, be it earthquake, flood, fire, hurricane, wind, whatever it is, we've got insurance to cover that. Again, one of the things is you're going to find that a lot of your investors are asking about foreclosure. Foreclosure is actually one of the quickest remedies in terms of being able to get your original capital back. If you enter into an agreement with someone, just some contract, and maybe you're fronting capital for them to start their new restaurant, and they breach the contract, what's your remedy? Your remedy is to go to court and to sue them. And that's extremely expensive, and it's going to take a whole lot of time. What's nice with trust deeds and mortgages is that's pretty much defined, and it's pretty much a very straightforward process. So what happens is, given the scenario of lending money to someone, I can't think of a better place to loan than on real estate. And again, it's a little different when we're dealing with flippers and we're dealing with developers. And investor mentality is if something does go wrong, you have the ability to negotiate for a higher return. So this always makes your prospective investors feel better because you know what? Frankly, I don't really want things to go wrong, but when they do, it actually puts a smile on my face. And I know that doesn't sound very nice. It's kind of a perverse way of thinking, but hey, if I'm not getting paid, if you're not getting paid and your investor's not getting paid, well, what are you going to do? Well, rather than foreclose and go down that path, doesn't it make more sense to negotiate a deal? Maybe negotiate some additional back points, maybe negotiate additional equity share, a higher equity share split, maybe negotiate a default rate. So there's so many things you can do. There aren't, and again, and you can do this because your money's collateralized. There's a lot of investments where your money's not collateralized, so you don't have that negotiating strength. What's nice about being the lender is you come from a position of strength because if they don't agree to some favorable terms. Now again, you can't be off the chart and be usurious and just really stick it to the borrower. If they've come across a difficult time, well, then you need to help them get through the difficult time. But nonetheless, if they're not in agreement with you, if they're being belligerent, if they're being stupid, if they're being ignorant, if they're just a pain in the ass, guess what? Foreclose. Back to loan to own. You would have never loaned, again, one of our rules, you would never loan unless it's something you want to own. So initially, if we're looking at the benefits to us, we would have never lent $1 on something we weren't interested in taking back. So what's nice is, from the beginning, you were able to structure your own terms. No one made you do the loan. You decided that, I'll take this interest rate, I'll take this piece of the profits, and I'm only going to do it on that property because I like that property. I'm protected, I'm collateralized, I've got title insurance, I've got fire insurance. If something goes sideways, I can negotiate better terms for myself. And at the end of the day, if I don't like it, hey, if the borrower can't agree with my terms, I'll foreclose, because from the day one, it was a loan-to-own scenario. So again, keep in mind, what you want to do is benefits you as a lender and you and your investor is to create an income, a monthly cash flow. There's a group of, I'll say they're competitors of mine here in San Diego, a company that they're doing very well. They come in, they flip homes. And what they offer their investors are 0 payments whatsoever, and they do an annual disbursement. Now, what they offer their investors is much more than what I offer our investors. But unlike them, we pay our investors every single month. Every single month they get a cash flow check. And then the icing on the cake, the lump sum check. These guys, what they do is they just are going to do an annual payout. And what I have found is most people in today's market, in today's economy, and those who do have the ability to write a check, they don't want a statement in the mail. There's too many hucksters out there just to look at a financial statement. What they really want is cold hard cash in their pocket. They want their money, 1, collateralized, and 2, I want monthly income. So if you have investors that'll take one lump sum a year down the road, 3 years down the road, 10 years down the road, hallelujah, congratulations, go for it. You're smarter than I am. But in the real world, you'll find that if you can offer them a blend of monthly cash flow and a lump sum of cash at the end of the transaction, you'll find that a lot of people will want to invest in that. And remember, one of the benefits to you is there's a due on sale. When that property sells, you don't have to worry about getting paid off. It's in the mortgage, it's in the deed of trust, it's a recorded document. So when that property sells, guess what? Escrow, title, they pull that information and they see there's a cloud on title. It's your mortgage, it's your deed of trust, it has a due on sale clause, and you get paid off. So it's not like they can sell the house and not pay you off. So, well, that's not true. They could sell the house, not go through an escrow, not go through a title, just bring someone in to write a check, give them the check, and sell the house. But guess what? The note is still due on sale. So just kind of going over some of the benefits, because I know some of you have been talking to investors, and these are some of the questions I'm getting back and I'm helping you guys with. So again, understand these are the benefits to you as a lender. And we always have to look at, beyond our benefits, what are the benefits to the borrower? Why will they say yes? We need them to agree to our terms. Well, what are the borrower's needs? That's what you always have to look at. You have to look at a higher loan to value. So what happens is when an investor is coming to you, an investor or a flipper, a developer, what they're looking for is they're looking for more loan to value that they can get than they can get from a bank or some other traditional source. Hold on, everyone. Hey, how are you, bud? How was school?
Good.
Okay, I got to record this, okay, bud? So I need you to be quiet. Okay, your note? Good. Yeah. You keep it. I'll come see you when I'm done recording, okay?
Okay.
Right.
Sorry for interrupting you.
No, not a problem. Love you.
Okay.
All right, I'm back. So, again, what you'll find is that, the borrower, the flipper, the developer, they're looking for a higher loan to value. They want as little skin in the game as possible because that means they can do more volume. A lot of investors just don't have the rehab capital. They may have enough capital for the down payment. They may have capital for the monthly payments, but they're short the rehab money. Many of them have credit issues. There could be something up with their credit. They could have had a recent foreclosure. They could have had a short sale from properties they bought in the heyday back in, and they could have bought a property in 03, 04, 05, 06 and didn't sell. In which case, in 08, 09, 10, 11, 12, they had to sell and they took maybe some losses there. Doesn't make them bad people. Doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing. What it means is they got into the game, they went in heavy, they got a little greedy, and the market was bigger than their solution. Also, what's really great is borrowers love this because it's like having a partner without having a partner. Everyone will tell you, partnerships are one of the worst things you can have in business. Most business partnerships don't work out over time. I guess it's kind of like marriages. Probably statistically, most marriages, which is a partnership, don't work out over time. So what if you could have the best of both worlds? What if that borrower could have the money, have a capital partner, and not have the ongoing battle of a partner of what color do we paint the house, how do we flip it, which ones do we buy, when do we sell them, what do we sell them for, what agents do we use, what contractor are we going to use, and all those other moving parts. What if they just had a money partner who lent them the money, let them totally make 100% of the decisions themselves, but they had to share in the profits? Well, that's pretty reasonable. That's having a partner without having a partner. That's very, very attractive to almost any real estate investor. And again, a lot of times the reason why they'll do this is they may have the money, but they want to mitigate the risk. Think about it. If an investor buys a piece of property or wants to build a piece of property, let me take it into different terms. Let me go with developers. A lot of times you'll find developers, they'll build a shopping center or apartment buildings or whatever it is, an office complex, or even a tract of homes. That developer traditionally, you could build 100 homes, 200 homes. That developer will have very, very, very little money in the deal. Most developments, the goal of the developer is to really have pretty much 100% financing, 95% financing. And that's how most transactions are done. What happens is the developer brings the skill set, the opportunity, the connections, the management of the construction, the design. He determines the highest and best use. He brings all the moving parts to the table. And basically the lender, who doesn't have those skill sets but has the capital sources, brings to the table the capital. So the developer is the guy who runs the show, makes it all happen, brings it to fruition, takes a vision and goes vertical with it. The capital lender, his skill set is finding the money. He brings that to the table. The developer has a certain floor obligation, a certain guarantee in terms of return to that lender. And then that lender also shares in some of the upside as well. Hence a participation arrangement. And that's how most developments are done. There's a participation arrangement between developer and lender. So the developer has mitigated his lending risk, and the lender has mitigated his experience risk or lack of experience risk. So hand in hand, that's why you always find that developers and banks and lenders seem to go hand in hand pretty well. And what it allows, ultimately at the end of the day, allows an investor to do is to do more deals, to close more transactions. Because if you can leverage in and have lots of protective equity where all parties feel comfortable and safe, the lender, again, the investor mitigates his capital side, the capital guy mitigates his knowledge side, and together they're able to do more deals. More deals equals more profit. So that's how you have to look at why the borrower wants to do some kind of equity share arrangement with you. So let's dive into, and this is kind of like passive income strategy number 2, because we spent so much time on number 1, which is the AITDs. So let's get into this participating mortgages. So again, let's just look at a real. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you real. Like I said before, every deal I'm going to bring you is a real deal. Everything, all the numbers I'm showing you will be real transactions. So none of this is hypothetical or guesswork. So let's just look at a straight 65% loan to value construction loan. Most banks will actually, on construction side, will loan 70%. So what you'll find is the typical developer scenario looks like this. The developer has a parcel of land that he's got lined up or may actually or already own. And there's no improvements on it. It's just dirt. And what he intends to do is develop a lot. Traditionally, to kind of help you visually see this, the developer does the horizontal work, the contractor does the vertical work. So developers go in there, and if they have to bring in roads or utilities, if the developer has to clear a lot, fill a lot, any of those elements, that's what the developer's job is to do, and to subdivide out the lots and things of that nature. And then what happens is the contractor comes in, and the contractor takes care of the vertical elements in it. So the contractor is the guy that actually pours the foundation, does the sticks and bricks to go vertical. And again, everything is done with the intent of basically building a property, building a house, building an apartment, building a shopping center, for the most part with the intent to sell it. Apartment buildings and shopping centers, really a lot of developers will buy and hold, but with single family homes, it's all turn and burn. So really the ultimate flipper out there are real estate developers. They build a house with one intention, to get rid of it. So the challenge is developers want more loan to value. So I'm going to give you an example. Here's a lot that we have picked up in the Florida Keys. It's a waterfront lot on a canal. And what happens is, I'll give you some numbers so this will all make sense for you. So what the lot price was, we purchased these lots for $114,000. And again, I think I shared when we did the marketing module on the Florida Keys, when I was showing you an example of how you should package up your deals. In the Florida Keys, the market, these just waterfront lots, little canal front lots, these were selling for $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 for just a piece of dirt. And because of FEMA and because of some things they've done, in essence, people can't build on these lots. And so you couple that with the fact that the market has gone soft. Well, those $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 lots, we're picking up for anywhere from about 85 to 125 grand. So in this particular lot, it's $114,000. So when you're working with developers, you need to understand, like a flipper, you have to understand some of the dynamics in terms of what's currently there, what's the asset that's currently there, and what are we looking at down the road, and how long is it going to take to get to that after repair value. So in terms of construction, to build a home, a little waterfront home, small 3-bedroom, 2-bath, sub 1,300 square foot home, where someone can, this is called a davit right here, where someone can pull up their boat, pull it out of the water, and just enjoy their little weekend getaway. Costs about 170 grand, 166 grand to build a house. So you've got 114 in the lot, you got 166 grand between the house and septic system and landscaping and things of that nature. So the combination of the two, the lot and the construction cost, run about $280,000 to deliver a turnkey home. So a bank, when a developer goes into the bank and says, well, I'd like to get financing, the bank traditionally will loan somewhere around 70% or $196,000. Again, for a developer who wants to do multiple properties, 30% skin in the game times several homes gets to be a pretty capital intensive after a while. So a developer is always going to look for more. And the reason why is the bank will say they'll give 70%, but if you look at it, the sales price, when that developer is done, the sales price is $400,000. So there's $208,000 in protective equity. So developer knows that he wants more, because if the place is worth 405 when it's done and they've loaned 196, the bank's really at 48% loan to value, which is basically means there's 51, almost 52% protective equity in the property. So the developer knows, because of the upside in value, that he can get a higher loan to value loan. So this is why a developer is willing to do a profit share type of structure, because they know, really, if you think about it, they're at 48, the bank's offering them 48% loan to value. That just doesn't make sense. So the developer or the flipper is willing to go out and say, tell you what, if I could borrow more than $196,175, I'd be willing to share in my profits. So here's what it kind of looks like. And again, these numbers I'm sharing with you, I just did like 3 days ago on a property in the Florida Keys. So I'm sharing real numbers, real time. So what we did is we went out to an investor and we go, okay, let's go to a private money lender and let's give 65%, but loan to after construction value. And this is my own term. People call it different things. I just want you to understand that there's different values. There's loan to value, there's ARV, after repair value. How about after construction value? Because I want you to mentally kind of separate things. There's current loan to value, and we know when we talk about flippers, flipping homes, there's an after repair value. But we're not repairing anything. We're building from scratch, so there's after construction value. So again, we still have that 35% protective equity, which is where we want to be. So what do those numbers look like to a private money lender if we say, look, we'll give you 65% loan to value, you still have 35% protective equity. So at $263,250, that is 65% of the 405. Again, the place was worth 405. So 405 times 65%, you get 263,250. Now, in this particular case, we were able to buy this lot, this waterfront, canal front lot, and we got the owner to carry back a first. So the person that sold us the lot seller, we had him carry back a first of $99,000. And again, if you remember, we paid $114,000 for the lot. So basically, we put $15,000 down. The owner carried back a $99,000 first mortgage. So what we're looking for is the difference between the 99 and the 263, which is 164,250. So we approach a private money lender and say, look, we have a lot that we are building. This is, by the way, if you look at the pictures, it's kind of interesting. If you're from California, you're probably going, what on earth is this? It's the Parthenon. What we do is in the Florida Keys, because obviously there's hurricanes and everything's at zero, maybe 6 inches above sea level. All homes are built about 8 to 10 feet above the ground. So that underneath the homes, this is all open space. People use them as patio storage, park things underneath it. But the home actually sits on top of this. So that's what this picture is. And you can see this is a home being craned up on it. Everything is factory built, good to go. One half is already sitting on the foundation. Another half is being placed up on the other half of the foundation. And then the two common walls are put together, Siamese together. So back to the numbers. So what we have is we have a second mortgage from a private money lender for $164,250. So we still have $141,000 in protective equity. So it makes sense for a private money lender because the protective equity is in place. So what are the terms? Well, the terms are there's $164,250 second mortgage. It's 10%. It's interest only. It's a 1-year loan. And there's 10% profit share. So that's why these investors, these private money lenders, want to invest because, again, remember we talked about having the floor rate, having that guaranteed foundation rate. Well, is 10% rate of return good enough in today's market? Absolutely, all day long. It's double digit. It meets the criteria of what I was sharing with you. So while other investors might be offering 6 or 7 or 8, what happens here is 10%. But it also has the icing on the cake, the equity kicker, which is the 10% profit share. So what's really nice is worst case scenario, the investors get 10%. And they have a $164,000 loan with $141,000 in protective equity. So those numbers all look good. And this is the bonus, the 10% profit share. So that's kind of the scenario of a participating mortgage. Here's kind of what it looks like after the fact. So what happens is you have that 65% loan to after construction value. We have to make sure that we have that equity within the property. So looking at the numbers again, we've got $263,000 is our 65% loan to value. We had that $99,000 first. We did $164,000 second from a private money lender, and that second is both an interest-only loan and a profit share loan. In this particular scenario, so when you're all done, you have a house built right on a canal. So what kind of return does that translate to for your investors? Well, your investors basically earns, because from start to finish is a 6-month process. It's a 1-year loan. By the time you're in and out at 6 months, sub 6 months, but I'm just going to use 6 months as an example. So that investor would have earned $7,139 in basically the participation. That would have been their icing on the cake. They would have earned $8,212 on interest income, basically their monthly cash flow checks. So if there was no profit in this property, they would have earned 10% annualized rate of return. They would have earned $8,212 for 6 months, or basically $16,400 over the course of the year. So the profit share, the icing on the cake, you can see was darn near double the income they received. So $7,000. So the total return by doing a profit share, had they done, let me back up. Let me word this differently. Had they just done a normal interest-only loan, they would have made $8,000. By doing the profit share, they made $15,000, which is $7,000 more income. So again, folks, when you're sitting down with an investor, feel free to share these presentations if you think that'll help you. But I mean, if you sit down and go, look, here's what most people will pay. Our investment's a little different. It'll pay you $7,000 more, almost double the income. So if you think about it, that $15,000 equates to 9.3% in 6 months. That's 18.6, almost 19% a year annualized rate of return. So when you're talking to prospective investors for your fund, because you're going to be a private money lender and you need to create your private money lending fund, I wouldn't go out there sharing that I can get people 18%. What you want to do is you want to share with them that you can get them 10%. Then what happens is, in an example, you can show them how you're going to get more than 10%. The 10% is basically the floor. Because if you tell people you can get them 18%, you'll lose some people. It's just too good to be true. But 10% is not too good to be true. But when you throw them the bonus, the icing on the cake, you just go, look, this is icing on the cake. We may not get this. We may only get $2,000. We may get $5,000. We may get $12,000. We may get no $1,000. But bottom line, the $8,200 is locked and loaded, good to go. So that's how you present it to your investors. You need to let them see it in this type of scenario. So let's move on with this. So here's an example of one of the properties that we just did. So this is Antigua. This is not the house, by the way, because right now Antigua hasn't been built. But this is what they look like. Remember I told you the homes are above the water. So here's it is on the canal. The boat's on davits out in someone's backyard. Everything's built above grade. And what they do is they have a little enclosed room down here where people just kind of hang out and barbecue. And this is kind of a fun play room. Store your bicycles, your surfboards, your scuba stuff. But anyways, that kind of gives you a sense for it. And then, so when you're talking to an investor, what you want to do is you want to be able to give them the performing. You want to share the numbers with them. So what you want to do is under promise and over deliver. Most investors would be very happy with a 10% annualized rate of return. So when you show them the numbers and get them more, they're quite shocked. Or keep in mind, you could promise the 10% and you could keep the other profit share. You can say, look, if I can get you 10% annualized rate of return collateralized by a mortgage on properties in the Florida Keys with $141,000 in protective equity, and you get monthly checks each and every single month, are you fine with that? Most investors will say yes. Great. if you're okay with that, can I have anything over and above that? If I could turn around and sell a mortgage at 12%, can I have the 2? Or if I sell it at 13, can I have the 3? Most people, most private money lenders are fine with that. So what if you promised just the 10%? Again, you know most investors are happy with this $8,200 every 6 months, or basically $16,400, $500 a year. They're happy with that. They're getting 1 or 2% or maybe 3%, and right now they're getting 10. On the other hand, you take the $7,000, and if that money's rolled twice a year, you've in essence made $14,000 off money that's not even yours. So you've made in essence over $1,000 a month positive cash flow on something that's not your investment. Heaven forbid should you actually do 2 of these a year, in which case you just made $2,000 a month. So not too shabby. So getting back on track. So this is what we share with investors. So I say, well, here's a property, give them the details of the property, and here's what it looks like. So this is kind of the rundown on it. This is where this particular property is. It's on Antigua, and you can see here's the canal. You take the canal, gosh darn it, you take the canal out to the basic open sea. So this would be on the Atlantic side. So what happens, everyone wants canal front lots. There's homes along this right here. No, in Antigua there actually isn't. In some areas like over here, there's homes along this area. Most people don't want a home here because they can't put their boats in it. Prettier views, but no boating. So what you'll find is people that like to boat, they'll put their money, invest their money on a canal front lot because they want to be able to put their boat in their backyard. This particular house that we're building, even though all my numbers will be based on a $399,000 sales price, we will list this thing probably around $420, and we'll probably get somewhere around $405 to $410. But I always do my numbers a little conservative. You should do your numbers conservative just in case. So let's go through the numbers so you can understand the numbers on why this profit share, how it lays out. And right here it kind of gives you the shortcut. There's $71,000, $395,000 in profit in this deal. But let's figure out how we got there. So the purchase price is $114 for the particular lot. And skip the mortgages for now. Buying costs are about $1,900 for the lot. And improvement costs are $166,000. That's what it costs to actually build one of these little homes and do the site work and all that fun stuff. So what you'll find is on a 1,285 square foot home, you're about $89 a square foot, all in, land and the whole enchilada. So first loan, the first lender, the person that sold the lot, carried back a first of $99,000, interest only for 1 year at 6% interest. So those monthly payments are $495. Now remember, I told you we brought in that private money lender, and these are the terms we gave the private money lender: $164,000, 10% interest only for 1 year, and 10% profit share. So this is where their information goes. Forget the loan to value because it does it based on the purchase price of the lot, so don't worry about that. So $164,000, it's interest only, 1 year, 10%. So $1,300 a month, almost $1,400 a month cash flow to that investor. So again, a lot of people right now, especially baby boomers, are looking at a way to convert their 401ks, their profit sharing plans, their IRAs into some kind of self-directed so that they can boost their monthly income. And for many people, this kind of capital they have, not a problem at all. And this additional income of $1,368 a month is perfect because right now they're getting a fraction of that. So let's look at the numbers. Let's just go to 6 months. So if we sell the property for $399, again, we're listing it at $420, but to keep numbers conservative, $399. Selling cost, if you look at my selling costs, are $32,000. I always buffer my sales cost with some buyer concessions. In the case of the Florida Keys, buyers are not asking for closing costs, but nonetheless, it's safe to have some additional money in there just to soften up your numbers. Don't be overly optimistic because you're doing a projection to your investors. I'm going to my investor and telling her that, look, we should be able to profit share in this $71,000, of which case 10% of it goes to her, so $7,000 goes to her. Well, wouldn't it be wonderful if I can sell it for more than my $399? What if I can sell it closer to 405, 410, 415? I don't think I'm going to get 420 because everyone wants to negotiate. So let's just say 410. Well, that's going to make this number go up. And or what if I only get $399, but I don't have any selling concessions to the buyer? And we'll break this down here in a minute. Well, that's going to make this number go up. So anytime you can give a projection where your investor is looking at this number saying, well, hey, there's 71,000, I get 10% of that, so I get $7,139.50. And all of a sudden they get a check for, I don't know, instead of 7,100, they get one for 7,900 or 8,300. That's what you want to accomplish. So again, what we want also to do is educate our investors and have everything be a see-through. We want everything to be transparent. We want them to see what the costs are so that they understand how this number is being derived. So you have you got holding costs, taxes, insurance. So here's some of your holding costs. You have to have maintenance, people to clean the house while it's empty because people walk through and look at it. You have insurance. You have taxes. You have utilities because you have water. You have heating in it. Well, not heating. You have air. So again, what you're looking at is you have a first mortgage, a second mortgage, a whole 9 yards. So those holding costs are $13,000. So that has to come off the bottom line. You have buying costs, which I already mentioned, of $1,900, and a purchase price paid $114 for the dirt, so $71,000 in profit. So that's what you're looking at. I know this number's a bit skewed, but it's not too far off. It doesn't take into consideration the holding costs. So, but the rate of return is, needless to say, off the chart at our end as the developer. So the other thing we want to do is with investors, if you're doing new construction or if you're talking to your investors about one of our deals, let's say you decide that you want to work with us and you're going to pull your investors together and we're the people bringing the deal to the table, well, you want to be able to talk intelligently about what takes place. When someone goes, well, it costs you $166,000 to build a house, what's that include? Well, let me share with you what it includes. So you can go through an itemization of these different items. How much is a septic? It's $18,500. There's some additional electrical work which needs to be done because the house comes pre-wired. We haven't built in a factory. They're delivered to the site. The house is wired, but you still need to have a meter brought to the site, and you still need to have the house plugged into the wiring at the site. So that's about $3,500. Florida does an elevation certificate because I guess they want to know how high their lots are. It's a lot of money for the 1 or 2 feet above elevation, but that's what they charge. Obviously, there's engineering, so that there's a fee there. So here's all the fees: foundation work to build those, those pylons I showed you earlier. So that's about $18,500. There's certain fees, impact fees. Not all lots have them. This lot has a $5,000 impact fee. The actual physical house itself, not finished, but the house itself with the roof and siding and windows and doors and kitchens and toilets and sinks is $81,000. And that's why we like factory built homes. It's just built 3 weeks, delivered to the site, and you have a turnkey house for $81,000. But all these other things are over and above that to kind of bring it all together. So anyways, I'm not going to go through them all, but you can get a sense for what they are here. You have to bring in a crane to actually put your house up in there. That costs $3,000. So what's nice is you give your investor in a profit share type scenario where you're saying, well, here's how much it's going to cost to renovate this house, or here's how much it's going to cost to build this house. You want to break it down and itemize it. Obviously, I can break down foundation work much deeper. I can break down septic much deeper. But most people don't want to know all the moving parts. How much is septic? It's $18,500. If they want to drill down beyond that because they're an accountant or they're an engineer, be prepared. But anyway, so this gives them a good snapshot of it. And again, you need to share with them what the buying costs are. There were closing costs when you bought. In this case, it's just escrow and title, which is $1,900, and selling costs. There's a real estate agent involved. So 5% commission goes to the real estate agent, which is $19,950. And remember I told you about the buyer's closing costs? I always put that number in there. That's a $7,980 buffer. That's an $8,000 buffer. So remember, we're telling our investors that they're going to make $71,000. Well, if I don't have to pay this right here, that's an extra $800 that just went to their bottom line. So they went from $7,100 in profit, they just went to $8,000 in profit. So that's not too shabby. So again, you want to keep some of these numbers in there for them. And then you always want to show some pictures. You saw an earlier picture of where the site is. I like to show a map. The maps, frankly, are easier to look at. But I also show them the actual site. So here's the site, here's the canal, there is the wonderful Florida Keys. And then some examples of the home. If you're doing a remodel, maybe a picture of a remodel before. This is new construction, so this shows them a kitchen, the kitchen layout. An example of a waterfront house, what they kind of look like when they're done. Yeah, they're all these crazy Caribbean colors. This house right here is one we had just finished 2 weeks ago. So again, kind of crazy Caribbean colors, and what it looks like from the back of the house onto why people love the Keys. So this will give you kind of an example of what an equity participation mortgage is. So we've laid out all the numbers, you've seen the numbers. At the end of the day, what you have to realize is this investor is going to stand to make $15,000 off of $164,000, which is an 18% return. We also know that if we're good and we can get higher than $399, because that was my projected sales price, if we get basically $410, well, that's another $10,000, which now our investor just made an extra $1,000. They went from $7,000 to $8,000. So that extra $1,000 drives this yield up quite a bit. And then the other thing is, what if we didn't have to pay the $8,000 in buyer's closing costs? Well, that translates to another $800 to the buyer, so that would take them from $7,000 to $8,000 to almost $9,000 in profit. So $9,000, that gives them another $2,000 in profit, making this a $17,000 profit. And I'm telling you, boy, now the numbers are really, really, really looking sexy. Now, bear in mind, we don't want to use those numbers when we're giving them an example. We'd rather use our more conservative numbers just to be safe. But if they got a $7,000, if we got lucky and we got our sales price and we didn't have those buyer's concessions and this became a $17,000 profit, now you're looking at, instead of 9.3%, you're looking at 10.3%. So you're looking at almost 21% annualized rate of return. So that's what you want to, this is kind of how you want to lay up an equity participation type mortgage. Well, that's about it for right now. I think you've kind of conceptually got it. We're going to be moving a little bit quicker here in the future because the AITD was really something pretty difficult to understand. This will be much simpler to understand. So as we go through new strategies, you'll get them a little bit deeper. In the next module, what we'll do is we'll go through this example, this deal. We'll show you the paperwork, the contract, so you understand how it's completed. I'll load a contract for you so you can use it. I'll put it up in Word format so you can use both the mortgage, the note, and the equity participation side of it as well. What I call a profit share agreement, a PSA, a profit share agreement. So anyways, I hope that was beneficial, and I will see you in the next module.